Bob Mulholland is a member of the Democratic National Committee and a lifelong friend of President Biden. He joins us now from Chico, California. Good morning, Bob. It's a little concerning that we were more concerned with how President Biden was going to appear and how he was going to speak rather than what he was actually going to say.
Yes, much of the media was trying to say that President Biden maybe wouldn't even make it through. But I'll tell you, I am very proud of President Biden. He went way beyond, I think, everybody's expectations, except maybe his wife's. And the overnight CNN poll showed 64% of the American people who watched it, and that's tens of millions, have a very positive view of President Biden's speech. I think last night, the speech, the American people, many of them, that was the first time they realized and got reminded who President Biden is, rather than what the Trump people and others have been saying. And Trump himself is having a lot of mental lapses.
I mean, this was being seen as a make or break speech. And as we've discussed, a lot of scrutiny on how President Biden presented himself. He was energetic. He was clear. He wanted to remind America of the successes of the past few years, Bob. But how political was this speech? Did it veer into campaign speech territory? And is that right to be doing that in this forum?
Well, it is a new arena out here in American politics. You have Trump who's in court every other day and making attacks on everybody. So, yes, it was a little more political than people expected, but it was in line with the American mentality right now, which is that the general election is here. We're not going to wait till Labor Day in September. And I thought the president was smart in the way he contrasted himself with Trump. I don't think he ever mentioned the name Trump. He just said his predecessor. And I think most American people, the reason they threw Trump out of office in 2020, despite what Trump says, is they're just tired of the chaos and the accusations. And in the last year with this campaign, Trump just makes more accusations. And the most significant thing, President Biden spoke about the American people and their concerns, while Trump is always talking about himself and how everybody's out to get him. And I think that rubs a lot of Americans the wrong way.
Well, Bob, you're right. He didn't mention the word Trump. Another word he didn't mention was the word abortion. He spoke about the rights and he's going to defend those. But why would he not mention the word abortion specifically?
I think we have found out, and I can't speak for President Biden, but we have found out in the last year there's been a lot of state ballot, 7 of them, and many of them were Republican states where the abortion rights won. And one of the most significant thing was in Ohio, where a young woman who had been raped by her stepfather, now an adult, and she used the word reproductive options. And that came across very, very well. So maybe that's what you saw last night in the State of the Union, where I think it's probably smart for us, the Democrats, and those who are pro-choice, to use the words reproductive rights, reproductive options, because abortion for some is a political word. But what we found out in these states, Republican states like Kansas, once you tell a story about a woman who was raped and then almost prosecuted for trying to get an abortion, all of a sudden there's a lot of women, including older women, who say, well, that's not right. And I think President Biden was speaking to that crowd last night.
And of course, this week we've had Nikki Haley pulling out of the Republican race. Joe Biden needs to reach out to those never-Trumpers, and I wonder how he does that and how he did that last night. He cited Ronald Reagan in his speech. How much was that reaching out to those traditional Republicans that he hopes he might be able to bring on board?
Well, to be frank, I think most of the Nikki Haley voters ultimately will be with Trump or don't vote in the presidential race. But yes, it is up to the president and all the Democrats and the campaigns around the country to speak to those people. And clearly the people who voted for Nikki Haley, and I actually talked to her and got a photo with her up in New Hampshire in January, that her people are angry about Trump. And a lot of them would tell me that the way he talks is always yelling at people. And so we as Democrats and President Biden have to figure out a way to talk to them, especially in the key states. You know, we're going to win California, we're going to win New York, we're going to win Maryland, but my home state of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, That's the three states that we the Democrats got to spend the most time on, and talking to the Nikki Haley voters and the independents who maybe not happy with Biden yet, but they're not exactly pleased with Trump and his campaign.
Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene was there, sat in a baseball cap and a T-shirt. To me, it looked kind of disrespectful, and she was heckling Biden. How is she perceived over in the US? Do people support her,
well,
her
most
attitude?
Americans never heard of her, never will. But last year, her husband dumped her and left, so that's an indication to me that the American people are getting tired of her. But she comes from a very rural, conservative county in Georgia, a lot of KKK members, so they're happy with her. And I think, I've been around this business for a long time, what she was doing tonight was creating a scene for her next fundraising email, which I'm sure went out during the night to all the KKK members in the South. Look what I did. I'm standing up to this guy who's pushing this and pushing that. And she'll raise money on it. But, you know, she could be like so many others in American political history. They're a flash, and then 4 years later, they're falling off the side of the wagon.